Committee will come to order, and I've called this hearing of the full Committee on Judiciary to examine the events surrounding the standoff between federal law enforcement agencies and members of the Branch Davidian cult near Waco, Texas. As the members well know, hearings at the full committee level are rare enough an occurrence to be called extraordinary, and I believe that the subject matter of today's hearing is appropriate for such extraordinary treatment because it cuts across multiple aspects of the committee's broad jurisdiction over law enforcement activities. While speculative and contradictory theories have abounded, it is only in the past few days that on-site forensic teams have begun to draw a number of tentative conclusions based on scientific observation and testing. That's all for the best, even if it departs from the scripts of the made-for-television movies already in production. The basic chronology of events related to the standoff and its fiery conclusion can be stated succinctly. On February 28th, after an extensive investigation and pursuant to legal process, a team of agents from the Treasury Department's Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms raided the heavily armed compound, then under control of cult leader calling himself David Koresh, in order to serve warrants for federal weapons violations. The raid turned into a fierce gun battle that left 4 BATF agents dead, 15 wounded, and 6 cult members dead. There ensued a standoff for the next 51 days, during which time the Federal Bureau of Investigation assumed the lead law enforcement responsibility and attempted through a variety of tactics to persuade Koresh to lay down his weapons, let the adult and juvenile cult members leave the compound, all to no avail. Finally, on April the 19th, the FBI undertook a major action to inject tear gas into the compound in an effort to drive the occupants out. The effort failed. Instead, Koresh and more than 80 of his followers died as a raging fire consumed all the compound's buildings in a few short minutes. However, establishing the baseline chronology of events is not the sole purpose for being here today. Rather, it is to hear from the 3 law enforcement officials directly responsible for the actions and the choices taken in Waco so that we can understand the decision-making process behind the events. Now, I don't relish playing omniscient second-guesser when there are still facts to be ascertained, evidence to be adduced. And given the instant experts that pop up everywhere in the press, I may be in a distinct minority. What I care about is whether we have a place in our federal enforcement agencies the capability and, yes, the creativity to deal with the increasingly disturbing situation of terrorism, whether in the high office towers of our urban centers or in small entrenched pockets of alienated citizens who operate separate and apart from a larger society. If such groups, whether they're called cults or not, pose a direct physical and violent threat to their own members or to others in society, then their operations cannot be ignored or justified through invocations to the great American tradition of the right of each citizen to be left alone. Oliver Wendell Holmes declared, "The essence of a free society is indeed the right to be let alone, but not at the expense of the social compact which allows all of us as Americans to live together based on the values we share together." What this committee and the public need to know is how, in a difficult situation of dealing with Branch Davidian cult, did our agencies perform, and how they processed signals, other information, such as it was from this man Koresh, whether they developed alternative plans of action, how they negotiated, how they prepared, how they implemented decisions that were made. The verdict on David Koresh's methods and aims can already be read in the Gallup polls. We're here to seek answers to weightier questions, I'm delighted our three leading law enforcement officials have made themselves available to the committee. And now I would just like to offer several notes of caution about testimony we're going to hear today. First, the investigations of both the decision-making process and the events of last Monday are at a very preliminary stage. It may well be that the answers to many of our questions will have to wait until completion of the forensic examination or the internal review of the Treasury and Justice Department activities that the President has ordered. And secondly, it may be that the witnesses will be reluctant to respond to some questions because they might expose investigative sources and methods or could jeopardize the pending criminal actions against a number of cult members relating to the deaths of 4 BATF agents. I believe that people of goodwill can easily accommodate both these considerations and Congress's need for accurate and complete information. We're participating in an important proceeding today, and to permit all members to have the chance to question our witnesses, I feel compelled to limit oral opening statements to the ranking minority members of the full committee and the chairman and the ranking minority members of the two subcommittees with major jurisdictions over the issues under discussion. Of course, all members are free and encouraged to submit individual statements for the record at this point. And so at this point, I would yield to my distinguished friend from New York, Mr. Ham Fish.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is indeed a tragic set of circumstances that brings us here today. In recent days, there have been considerable fault-finding and finger-pointing. Hopefully, as you have said, this hearing will get us beyond recrimination and help us to better understand what happened in Waco, why it happened, and how better to prepare for possible future similar episodes. On Monday, April the 19th, 86 persons, 24 of whom were children, lost their lives. Prior to this, on February 28th, 4 brave ATF agents were killed in the line of duty. This committee oversees the operations of the Department of Justice, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. It is a legitimate exercise of our legislative and oversight responsibilities to inquire into the strategies and decisions that led to the tragic events in Waco. Moreover, the American people expect their Congress to inquire on their behalf deliberately, thoroughly, and fairly into the threat, the decision-making, the options, and the lessons learned. Obviously, this was an unusual and extremely difficult situation for law enforcement officials because they were dealing with a complex, unpredictable, and dangerous personality. This certainly was not the classic hostage situation, nor was it terrorism. But was this a bizarre, isolated incident or a portent of things to come? We need to know whether we are facing a new and different challenge to the public safety, health, and welfare. Law enforcement in this country today involves enormous challenges. It places great responsibility on the shoulders of law enforcement officers as well as agencies. And throughout this nation, heroic deeds and rescues on the part of police occur daily. Certainly mistakes are made, but most often law enforcement in this country is carried out with great skill and professionalism. Nevertheless, when a high-profile episode such as the Brandt Davidian standoff occurs and results in what appears to have been an unnecessary loss of life, America asks why. America and the Congress have a right to know what happened, but in this search, we should not forget the difficult, almost impossible challenges that law enforcement face every day. And so I welcome our distinguished witnesses, the Attorney General of the United States, the FBI Director, and the Director of Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Thank you for being with us, and I look forward to your testimony.
Mr. Edwards, the gentleman from California.